Hey Planet Watchers, how are you doing? Lots of things to discuss today, lots of news. So first things first, let me start with confirming that something that we already announced, namely that all paid purchase Type 3 and Type 1 sensors have been shipped by now. So either you have already received or it's coming very, very soon from your courier. Following this, we did release the new app. So it's been released on the stores. It is hitting national app stores gradually, which means that maybe it will appear first in the USA and then in Asia or vice versa. That doesn't depend on us, depends on Apple and Android. But it's coming, maybe by now it has hit all stores probably. So it is there. Now this app is a major, really, milestone for PlanetWatch. It has required an incredible amount of work, and I really want to pay tribute to our CTO Ivan and to all his technical team, because they've been working around the clock for several months on this app. So it is a big milestone for the company. And of course, please be a bit patient, as we are having a huge flood of app requests on the servers, and we are not yet Google, which means that we are scaling up resources in real time, because the amount of requests is really huge, a bit even higher than expected. So we are scaling up resources. The app should run smoothly after some settling period. So it will adjust soon, and then will run smoothly. Okay, so that's about the app. And please, very, very important, do read carefully, please, our last 3 blog posts which refer to the app, the activation procedures. And only if after reading this post you really need support, then please do not send emails, which are not the right way to get support. Just open tickets and all tickets will be answered. But once again, if you read all the blog posts, which is essentially one main blog post with 2 appendices depending on the type of sensor you need to activate, I believe things should be clear once you read these posts. Okay, so next bit of information. Following the release of the app, it makes sense to launch the first technical AMA next week. So one person from the developer team will be able to answer all your app related questions. We'll put up a form and you will be able to submit your questions soon. Now let's come to a big issue which has raised lots of questions. KYC, know your customer, personal data. Okay, now I'll do my best to be as clear as possible. I want to discuss 2 points. First of all, why we introduced this, and then how it works. But I want to start from the why. So why? So as I mentioned some time ago, you should not think of PlanetWatch as a mining project. Why? Because in a typical crypto mining project, such as, for example, Bitcoin mining, users can use any piece of hardware as long as it can run the right algorithm, right? So you can build mining farms, why not? The more units you connect, the more money you can make. There is no way to cheat, because the algorithm is secure, obviously, period. Now, PlanetWatch is something very different. PlanetWatch is a global environmental monitoring project based on big data with incentives for data contributors, Planet's tokens. So we give incentives by the tokens to those who commit to sending us meaningful data from which we can extract scientific and as well as business value. So unfortunately, this commitment can be broken by people who try to cheat. Unlike Bitcoin mining farms, which are okay in the Bitcoin world, building PlanetWatch sensor farms amounts to cheating, as we said several times, because the data that you get out of farms are not useful. So if you send us farm data and get planets in return, this is the same as buying food in a shop with a fake dollar bill. That's cheating. Unfortunately, in a large community, you will always get some people who try to cheat, and we want to get rid of them. So again, why are we introducing KYC? Well, before the introduction of KYC, if you were a PlanetWatch cheater, You could set up a sensor farm and Earth planets until we find out. When we find out, we ban your sensors. However, before KYC, you could create a new email address and essentially start all over again. Now, with KYC, if we find that someone is cheating, we are able to ban the person, not just the sensors. PlanetWatch is about trust between people. If you breach our trust relationship, you get banned as a person. It might sound a bit nasty, but that's the only way to build something which delivers value. Our business, our project is about getting valuable data and extracting value from them. So we can't be forgiving with people who cheat about data quality, with people who pollute data quality. Okay, so the motivation for KYC is to be able to identify the human beings who are trying to game the system. It's as simple as that. Now, how does that work? Now, our KYC process uses a third-party service provider which specializes in the processing of personal data. It is a French company named Synapse. So they work for a number of companies, in particular for several crypto entities, including the likes of Bitfinex and Polkadot. They allowed me to release these names of customers. So they know what they're doing, and they are responsible for storing securely the KYC personal data on their servers, which are located in Europe. They are also responsible for implementing modifications asked by users. So many of you probably know that under European privacy regulations, you have the possibility to seek modifications or erasal of your personal data. So in compliance with this, Synapse would process such requests upon demand. So this is done in compliance with the European privacy laws, which are, I believe, among the most stringent in the world. Okay, the next thing I want to say, it is obvious to me, but it is worth stating probably. Please note that on the blockchain, on the Algorand blockchain, we only store non-sensitive, non-personal information, which is approximate position of sensors for outdoor sensors, no way to extract exact installation address, as well as scientific data, obviously the PM2.5 values, ozone, NO2, and all that. So the point I want to make here is that obviously no personal data is written on the blockchain. It would be just crazy and illegal to do that, because of course you cannot modify or erase data once they're written on the blockchain. Since I've seen somebody suggesting that we were writing personal data on blockchain, the answer is no, obviously. The last thing I want to state is that obviously our data products will not include personal data, which in other words means that we are not going to sell your personal data without your consent. You know, from time to time you read of big companies actually doing this. Sometimes they get away with that, maybe because they're big, but it's clearly not something that we aim to do. We will not do that. Okay, that was kind of philosophical explanation part about KYC. Now, KYC requires some technology, as you have all experienced probably already. Now, there have been some technical issues with the KYC process by Synapse. Some people had an issue with the liveness proof, and apparently once you fail for a number of times, you get blocked and you cannot try again, which is a problem. Now, we are talking to Synapse, and they need to essentially manually re-enable the process for people who got it blocked. They are the only entity who can do that, and this might take a little bit of time. Please be patient. Let me use again one of my favorite slogans. PlanetWatch is not a race. Who earns first, who deploys first, who downloads first. We are rewarding, and we will be rewarding over time, long-term performance and long-term commitment. So if you lose half a day, 1 day, 2 days, because of whatever issue, believe me, that is not going to be relevant under any point of view, if you see what I mean. What is relevant is long-term commitment. Right, now I have a series of real user questions and I want to go through them. The first question is a bit of concern about the token on exchanges, some people feel that liquidity is still very low, and when liquidity is low, transactions which are not huge could move the price significantly. Now, admittedly, liquidity is not large, it's not comparable to a major, of course, cryptocurrency, but it's growing steadily and gradually. We are around $400,000 per day lately. And well, I have good reasons to believe that it will increase in the future in a significant way. But again, as usual, just be patient. Don't worry about this. You have to look at PlanetWatch as a whole, as a project which is moving ahead. You have to look at our long-term performance. We are very young, but there is already a bit of a track record, including for the token. So have a look up at our track record over the months that you've been in touch with us. And that's what you should be evaluating. Second question, can we get a technical roadmap channel added to Discord? Okay, I'll discuss this internally with the technical people because, you know, there are items which cannot be disclosed, items which we did disclose, and the tech AMA as of next week should help answering most questions on this. So maybe that's a better way to exchange info, but I'll have a word with the team. Then I have a question about our future plans. Very ambitious suggestions. Are we going to deploy or help deploy solar farms, windmills? Do we have connection with entities in sustainability to help design better and more sustainable buildings and infrastructures? Do we have plans to deploy or build CO2 capture structures or to partner with a research center working on this? Well, these are all very interesting things. The answer is not in the short term because we just don't have the time for now. I mean, it's very important when you are a startup to grow in an orderly manner, not to do 20 things at a time. Otherwise, of course, since resources are limited, you just cannot succeed. So we are fast and furious, but rational at the same time. So we try to go very fast. I believe we are going very fast, but we have to be reasonable. Okay? So the answer is, for the time being, we need to focus on delivering our sensing network to gather relevant data sets, demonstrate that they are useful, can be monetized, and once we have achieved some additional milestones in this direction, then the sky is the limit. A question about Type 2 devices. I did say that there is a Type 2 device in the making. Now, please note, because some people still get confused by this types thing, Type 2 in our word means outdoor air quality sensor, say consumer grade. So a device which measures very accurately some relevant parameters, in particular PM 2.5, but where we try to price it as cheap as possible, trying to striking the best balance between performance and value. But in any case, it is outdoor. It's a new project. I believe in the coming weeks I might be able to share some design features, but I cannot promise sales of the device before the end of the year. We are trying to go very fast because we believe it's a very cool device. And it fills a gap in our world because at the moment we're not really offering any Type 2 device. So it's very important. It's an important project, but again, as usual, we need to get it right. But it's coming. Then there is a request for an update about Arquinos. Okay, Arquino production is going according to plan globally, with usual challenges about procuring components and all that. But I think I'll be able to give you a good update on this next week. A question about the ratio between the cost, the price of Type 3 sensors and their token earnings. Because, I mean, if you take a financial attitude into this, you would say, hey, it's expensive, but it doesn't earn a lot, and blah, blah, blah. Now, first of all, let me remind you that we have decided to top up out of PlanetWatch our own pockets Type 3 rewards until the end of 2021 by an additional 50%. So on the white paper you read that you get about 31 tokens per day under perfect conditions from Type 3 sensors, and we will put on the table an additional 15 approximately, so an additional 50% till the end of the year. In parallel, we will be soon organizing a community vote with a proposal to make this increase permanent and funded by the Type 3 rewards budget, and I will recommend to vote in favor of this. I discussed already that the reason why we are proposing this change is because at some stages we decided that Type 3 was going to be a reset compliant indoor sensor, and that is a high spec sensor, very reliable sensor, so the value of the data calls for a higher earning rate. Question about license pricing. Will that remain the same for the foreseeable future? Why would you change it? What would be the reasons and all that? Now, the commitment I can take and in fact renew with you guys is that we'll never change whatever price overnight. We'll always announce in advance pricing decisions. Now, license pricing is obviously a sensitive parameter in the network construction phase where we are now. And again, if one thinks purely in financial terms, one could argue that pricing should be fixed in planets and float in fiat terms according to planet's price fluctuations in order to keep a constant ROI and blah, blah, blah. As you should have learned by now, this is not the logic that we are implementing at PlanetWatch. PlanetWatch is not an investment scheme. It is a science and business project with incentives for data providers. So, bottom line is, we want to keep joining PlanetWatch as affordable as possible. That's why we implement fiat-pegged prices for the licenses. At the same time, obviously, we need to cover the costs in order to be able to build long-term value. So it cannot be free, it cannot be too cheap. So we believe the right compromise is to keep a price which is reasonable and is fixed in fiat terms, so that the planet cost will fluctuate depending on planet token price. So we don't plan to change anything in the short term. If we decide to, you'll be the first to know. Okay, another interesting question. Would it be useful in the future to know more about the sensors, where they are located, for example, for indoor, if it's bedroom, workshop, office? Could that info be implemented based on today's data? Of course, as I said already, adding this kind of metadata, so information about the use case of the sensor in a broad sense, adds value to the data set. Of course, based on what I just said about KYC and personal data, we just need to be very careful to handle sensitive information in a correct manner, and we will be. But indeed, once we achieve some critical mass, it will be very interesting to compare air quality across, for example, hospitals in Europe in a fully anonymized way, obviously, but that's knowing that the sensor is in a hospital versus a sensor based, for example, in a hotel. That is interesting and relevant information. So we will process the information properly, and that would enrich the data set. Now, do you plan to have more places where we can pay with planets in the future? Can you disclose something? Okay, that's an interesting point. It's a tricky point, to be honest with you. It's a tricky regulatory affair. What I mean is that there are a number of entities which told us that they would be keen to accept planets payments. But based on my current understanding, this is tricky in terms of compliance with the utility token definition, at least in some countries. So we'll be seeking legal advice on this again, because there are requests from interested entities to allow this. But as you have seen, as you have noticed, we are being very careful with a number of things, in particular this sort of compliance about token definition. And there are a number of subtleties involved with where the token is used, and a number of things. So we are being cautious about that. A more technical question. Would it be interesting to have sensors attached to a car, for example, so that you can sweep a big area? Now, it is interesting in principle indeed. You could think of putting sensors on cars, buses, bikes, running people, whatever. Well, running people, we have wearables. In theory, it's very interesting and very effective. In practice, there are some subtleties, some complications related to the airflow around a moving object. So measuring air quality from a fixed device, from maybe a fast-moving one, is not the same thing. There are issues related to the flow of the air near the sensor, if we talk obviously about outdoor monitoring. So doing this is feasible. It has been done, but it needs quite a bit of time for testing. On the other hand, what is very feasible, very interesting, and with no such issues, is indoor air quality monitoring in public transport and other vehicles. That is relevant, very interesting, and we have a number of discussions in progress. One more very interesting question. When will you plan to audit the project, and who will be the auditor? Well, I'm not sure what kind of audit the person is suggesting. We are, as you know, a French company. As such, we are regulated in the sense that we have the obligation to submit annual accounts. We have a number of obligations. In order to get audited to a higher degree, we could at some stage seek ISO certification for some of our internal projects, processes, for example. We could seek this kind of certifications. Well, sure enough, if we move in this direction, somebody will say that we are not decentralized, right? Well, I guess you can't make everybody happy. Next question is about concerns that if a crypto winter comes, the price of Planet might be impacted, and what happens if the token price falls, how can you survive, and things like that. Well, I've already commented on this. We have a lot of traction, a lot of interested parties supporting us, so we have adequate fiat resources. Of course, everything can happen. A startup is a bumpy ride, but I believe we have adequate fiat resources. I guess that was the bottom of the question. Okay, tech question, whether the Kythera sensor needs to have the phone constantly on. No, let me clarify. Apart from AtmoTube Pro, which, as you have noticed, as you know, needs its own app, and we just released an update for that very sensor. So we released incidentally an app named PlanetWatch Wearable, which is essentially an update of the old app, which is only used now to manage AtmoTube Pro, because that sensor needs constant connection to a mobile phone. But that's the only sensor in our current set of sensors which needs that. So all other sensors, after the initial configuration where you need your mobile phone, they don't need your phone on once they are configured. Okay. Does PlanetWatch have any plans to organize environmental events? Yes. Not tomorrow. Yes. Okay, some people have passed advanced KYC and still can't buy more than 5 licenses as promised. Now, we are processing requests as we speak. We have lots of requests. They have to be processed manually for the time being. So for the time being, once you pass advanced KYC, you also have to open a ticket and select the correct option if you want to buy more licenses. So it's not automatic. You do the KYC and you can buy. You need to open a ticket. For the time being, we'll try to make that automatic as well. We also announced that at some point we will ask everybody to use a single email address, and somebody's getting worried about how do I merge my emails. As we wrote in a post, don't stress. This is not something to be implemented tomorrow. When we are ready to ask you to merge the emails, we will of course give instructions about that. So relax. Okay, another question which is kind of a recurrent, but worth an answer anyway. What is the use case for the Planet token? So why should people buy Planet tokens and not just sell tokens as soon as they earn them? Okay, all our products and services will either be payable directly in planets, and as you know, all our online sales are going to switch into planets only, as we announced, I believe, next week. For some corporate and governmental customers, we might bill them in fiat, because you can't ask the average municipality to pay in Planet tokens. I think wherever you live, I think you can understand this. However, when we get this kind of payments in fiat, we will convert a large fraction into planets. So it will end up being planets payments, even when it's not direct. So to go back to the question, what is the use case for the Planet token? Where does the value come from? The value of the data is the key. We set up all this thing for a number of reasons, but the key reason is to generate data products which are relevant. So if we win this bet that our data are relevant, people will need planets to access this data, and that's a use case for the Planet token. That's why we insist so much on data quality, right? Okay, I think I have the last question. Oh, that's a kind of support-like question, but okay, let me answer. Do we create another account under the Explorer even if we have one with PlanetWatch when we purchase the license? So, okay, let me try to clarify this, although it's written in our latest blog post, I believe. So when you purchase something online, when you purchase a license, for example, you get an account, but that account is only valid, is only used for e-commerce purposes. Your real PlanetWatch account, the one that governs the sensors and the Explorer and all that, is the one that you create on the Explorer. So that's the PlanetWatch account that we're talking about. The account we create to buy, it's only used essentially for purchases, but it's not the key one. The credentials are not the relevant ones. Okay, I hope it's clear. I hope you like what you're seeing, not my face, obviously, the project. There is a lot coming up. I've been advised by some of you actually not to anticipate things before they are delivered, so I should be more careful with my little spoilers. I gave a spoiler last week, so I won't repeat, but I have lots of commitments in the coming weeks, and I'm very optimistic. Stay healthy and keep watching the planet. Bye-bye.